All right, Zero Blitz is usually Zero Blitz with Frank and Fitz because Frank Schwab is usually with me, Jason Fitz. But today, no. Instead of Frank cheating on me with forwards, Charles McDonald, no. Instead, CMAC is here. And this is like, I feel like CMAC, we got like a scorned lover thing going here. Like, this is like when the wife and the girlfriend meet each other. Frank's not here to defend himself. I'm sitting here saying, what are you doing with my man? Like, this is a whole thing.
Frank, that's my man. I love having conversations with Frank about football. The exemplist is no more, but I think in the future and the next iterations we have of whatever podcasts are coming, I'm going to be stealing him a lot more from you too.
So what are we, like all in a big, weird, incestuous open marriage? This feels like the 70s, yes. Man. It's a key party. We're just throwing the keys in, and whoever goes home with who goes home with who.
Yeah, the Yahoo Sports football boys have decided to start a poly relationship, and I'm taking over as a dominant one if I can help it.
Look, anybody that's met me for 2 seconds knows it's no surprise that I didn't get a chance to be Big Spoon. No dominance here. Like it just never happens. Nobody ever thinks of me as the leader in the yard. I don't know why. I've been working out. CMAC, I'm gonna tell. Like I know we got football to get to, but can I tell you? Mm-hmm. I've been working out and I've been eating the same things since May 15th. I've had the same 5 meals at the same time every day. I got this trainer with this gym pack. I'm in the gym a couple of days ago and look, my body fat's way down. I'm starting to get abs, exactly what I wanted, right? But I'm lifting as much as I could possibly lift. And this guy walks up to me, super scrawny guy, and he taps me on the shoulder. He's like, man, you're really getting after it. I was like, thanks, man. He's like, we scrawny guys got to stay together. It's impossible for us to get big. And I'm like, man, I felt yoked today. And all of a sudden I'm a scrawny guy. See, I can't be the big guy in the prison yard.
Yeah, no one says that to me at the gym. I don't get that.
It must be nice. All right. We got a lot to dive into today, including some OTA questions that you have leading into OTAs that I think are important to get to. But before we do that, there's some news and notes going on around the league. Everybody's clamoring about, look, the Cowboys are always going to be a news item, but I think Dak, particularly when we look at the contracts they're dealing with, what the future is, I'll remind everybody, Dak cannot be franchise tagged. He cannot be traded. There's nothing they can do. He's in the last year of his deal. So he was at his camp for kids, and he made it sound like maybe, he said, there's been conversations back and forth, but for most part, I've been letting my agent do that. Day one of training camp, my mind flips towards helping my team and doing everything I can. The money and all that will take care of itself, always has. But there was a little bit of a positive tone. So Cowboys fans are sitting here feeling like, man, maybe things are going okay with Dak. How do you take that?
Dak's never going to be a guy that says anything inflammatory about the team publicly or maybe even privately. I don't really think that his comments mean all that much because we all know who's in the driver's seat here. It's Jerry Jones. And it seems like he's decided that they're going to play this out, not only with Dak, but potentially with CeeDee and Micah too. I think it's a pretty terrible strategy, like an objectively bad one, considering what we know about how hard quarterbacks are to replace. 2, just in general, if you're extending a young player at a position of need that's really good, you typically want to be as fast as you can on that instead of waiting until, Devonta Smith signed his deal, A.J. Brown signed his deal, Justin Jefferson signed his deal. Now, these are the baselines for what you're going to have to pay CeeDee Lamb moving forward. I think it's silly, but look, this is where the Cowboys find themselves. I would just say to Jerry, bro, if you're really comfortable with Dak walking next year into free agency or trading him for, a boatload of picks, what's next? What's your plan after that? Because if you don't have Dak, we can sit here and argue about how good Dak Prescott is or not, but if he's not on the Cowboys roster for next season, that's the worst team in the NFC East, by far. So you got to have a plan to do something. And right now, if I was a Cowboys fan, I would be a little concerned about what we're actually doing here.
I think 99% of the time, we have to remember that the team holds all the leverage because of the franchise tag. Why this is different is because if Jerry just wants to let it go and let God, he's got to remember he can't actually force Dak to stay here. And that's so rare in today's NFL because that contract has stipulations. Dak really controls his own destiny. So even if Jerry's like, you know what, you want to go date other people? I'm good with that. He's got to understand that once that happens, may not be able to take it back. That's why I'm more and more convinced that Dak Prescott is not going to be the Cowboys quarterback next year. Not because he's not very good. The Cowboys showed you they don't care about the running game this year, so they're going to win games this year the way they won last year, which is behind Dak, who was, by the way, second in MVP voting for much of the season, right? So you're going to have this great regular season. Who knows what happens in the playoffs? Who cares? If you're a team like the Raiders that's sitting here taking on Patrick Mahomes and you're drafting yet again, you got Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. You got no hope at quarterback long-term right now. And you find yourself going into next offseason saying, how do you beat Patrick Mahomes if your best option is a bad rookie draft class or Gardner AOC? The answer to that is you back up the Brinks truck. I'm telling you, I am convinced Mark Davis, and it only takes one, Mark Davis will turn the Brinks truck around and say, you know what? I'll make you the highest paid quarterback in football. I'll guarantee as much as you need to because I'm just tired of not having the most important position in sports handled. I don't think there's any way that Jerry can compete with that when he starts getting the love from everywhere else.
Yeah, I don't really know. I just don't understand what's going on here. Like you tell most teams, I'll give you a core, a three-player core of Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons. You're like, dude, we might be able to build like a Super Bowl winning team if we can put like the right pieces around them. So, like I do understand, like as just someone who is a fan of Dak Prescott, thinks Dak Prescott's a very, very good quarterback. I do kind of understand people being tentative about how they feel about him. The playoffs haven't always been great, and I feel like as a Falcons fan, it kind of feels like a lot of conversations that were happening around Matt Ryan when he was at his peak, where it's like, hey, this is a really good player, not quite Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, but you should still feel like if you have the right piece around him, you can go pretty far. So just the fact that they're here with this contract situation that's just unresolved, because also if you're a Dak Prescott, and even before you get to like a free agency type of deal where I don't think people are really prepared for what Dak Prescott would make if he was on the open market. I think people would be like, oh, okay, these guys are really underpaid compared to what they could actually get on the open market. It'll be a lot more than 55. And personally, I think it'd be probably a good deal more than 60 per year. But if you're Dak Prescott and you're going to negotiations with the Cowboys, you're like, I'm not going to get paid less than Jared Goff. Or, I got to start around where Joe Burrow is. You're just putting yourself in such a bad spot. You're hamstringing yourself financially. But like I said before, this is, for whatever reason, the path the Cowboys have chosen for themselves. I think it makes no sense.
Even if Dak, God forbid, were to get hurt, he's still going to get paid by somebody. Like, that's the inevitability. There's just too much need out there at this position. And I understand everybody says, well, what about the playoffs? You know what sucks more than being bad in the playoffs? Not making them. And there's a ton of teams out there that aren't even sniffing the playoffs. So you'll take 17, eventually 18 games of great play if it gets you into the playoffs, because at least that puts you closer to getting the dance. You got a chance. You got no chance if you're walking into the season with some of the quarterbacks we see around the league right now.
Yeah, and it's not even just, like, I think the Raiders would be a good fit for teams that probably feel like they're like a quarterback away, but it's even beyond that. Depending on what happens with Will Levis and the Titans, depending on what happens with Bryce Young and the Panthers, like, there will be suitors. So it's not like Dak won't have options, which again to me would make me want to get the deal done even faster, because let's say you have one of these like NBA type situations where Dak hits free agency, but like, oh, I'm still willing to negotiate with my previous team and potentially sign a deal. Okay, well, now, we're dealing with negotiations from 3 other teams who want to pay him $65 million a year, and that might not be in our budget, but 55 probably is, and that can be yours if you get it done right now.
Isn't that sort of why Parsons has got to be laughing to the bank too? Because, like, look, he knows he's still got a couple of years. He's like, look, you want to just keep watching the money that goes to pass rushers? Fine, it'll cost you in the end. You don't want to do it for me now. Then when you do it for me, you aren't going to get a hometown discount. Like, I want to get every damn dollar I can get.
Oh yeah, hometown discount. That's a made up term that fans may want to use to make themselves feel better. I literally cannot think the last time like a player really took like a real deal hometown discount. I just don't think it really happens like that anymore. But if you're Micah Parsons, like, yeah, you're shooting for $30+ million a year. If you're CeeDee Lamb, you're probably shooting for $31-32 million a year. If you're Dak Prescott, you're shooting for $55+ million a year. It gets really, really expensive really fast. We just saw it with we saw like an example of this with the Jaguars recently, where you kind of waffle and drag your feet on the Josh Allen extension. He goes out, has a career year, and now, oh wait, we need to get Calvin Ridley and Josh Allen done. And now, obviously, you opt to sign Josh Allen because he's an elite player at his position, but you have the franchise tag him in the process. And now Calvin Ridley has walked off to a division rival. You have an example, Dallas, of what can go wrong when you drag your feet right in front of you. It's already happened. You don't even have to go through it, which is another reason why I'm just confused at why they're here. But yeah, if I was CeeDee, Micah, Dak, there's no hometown discount because you only get one chance to make this really, this kind of money in your career. Maybe Micah or CeeDee will have it, 2 more times. But for Dak, this is probably it. So you got to take it while you can get it. You're not going to be able to make this money when you're in your 40s plus. So you got to do it now. Why not?
Did you see the news on Josh Allen that he has changed his jersey to Josh Hines Allen?
Right.
And it's amazing because he's honoring his biological family. Apparently, I didn't know he has a ton of family members that play professionally in other leagues. So I didn't know Hines and Allen all combined. But let's be honest, like for anyone that doesn't know, if you join SAG-AFTRA, the Actors Union, if somebody else already has your name, even if it's your name, you can't register it in the union. So like if there's another Charles McDonald that's already an actor, you can't become Charles McDonald. You'd have to become something else. And so I think that there's a little bit of this. Like imagine being one of the best in the NFL at your position and you're still the other Josh Allen. On behalf of all of us that have had to say the other Josh Allen for years, I appreciate the Hines Allen hyphenation.
Yeah, I mean, his sister's she's a champion, WNBA champion, and has some other accolades to her name in terms of basketball. Just ain't no shame in wanting to go like that, even if it's for union reasons. But I thought that was pretty cool because yesterday when he announced it, I got to learn a whole lot about his family that I did not know before. Like, wow, you guys got some real deal athletes here. Makes a lot more sense that one of you guys might popped out to be an all-pro NFL edge rusher.
All of a sudden, it's just like, bam, that happened. All right, so give me in your mind, yes or no here. Dak Prescott, a Cowboy next year. I say no.
I'll go yes because they will look out into the wasteland and realize that no one is coming to save them.
CeeDee Lamb gets a mega deal for next year. Yes or no?
Yes, but not from the Cowboys.
Ooh, you think he goes somewhere else?
I think they pick 2 to 3. I think he's the odd man out.
Okay. Wow. All right. That means you think Parsons is getting a massive deal done.
Yeah. No matter how crazy the boy is, you can't let that go. That's the best defensive player in football. You got to keep that around, scheme proof. But it would be tough to pay all 3. I think you get scared of walking into 2025 without a quarterback, flip CeeDee for picks, and keep it moving.
Yeah. So for me, I think simply because they can franchise. So I say no to Dak. He's going to go somewhere else. They have so many rights on CeeDee. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they franchise CeeDee and they get Micah done first, right? You franchise CeeDee, get Micah done early so you miss more of the pass rushers. You franchise CeeDee and then you put it all off another year. But that is not going to make him happy at all, right? Like that, no. And I realize people will be like, well, the franchise tag for a wide receiver is $26 million. Okay, who cares? If he has the chance to go out and get $150 million fully guaranteed, or he has the chance to get $25 million fully guaranteed, he'd rather have more.
Yeah. More is always better if you can get it, especially in a position where your body dies every time you participate in it. More is always better.
Is more always better when we're talking about the number of games in a season? How about that segue? Holy cow. Joe Burrow was on Part of My Take, and he was talking about, he was asked a very innocuous question, by the way, like a very innocent question about, the schedule. And he said, how many games are we playing? They chose 18. He immediately had a way he thought it should be done, which would be 2 buys at a bye week. Everybody takes week 13 off. It becomes an all-star week. Super Bowl pushes back to the day before President's Day. Now, real quick, I would say week 13 is Thanksgiving week. So he might want to look at a calendar. There's no way they would do week 13. But if I'm asking you about this proposal in general, 18 games, 2 buys, one week that everybody gets off, pushing the Super Bowl between President's Day, what say you?
I think if you're going to do 18 games, which first of all, I don't think that Joe Burrow should be talking about 18 games out loud. A top 5 quarterback coming into like quasi support of 18 games before you even get to negotiating about the 18 games. Probably not great business for everybody involved. There's not a quarterback in his playing positions where, you're getting hit every single play, although Joe Burrow was getting hit almost every single play that he played last year. I do think, if we're just going to pull that out of it, 18 games, you're going to have 2 bye weeks. Just for safety reasons. Because like now you're venturing into territory that's longer than anything that has really been a part of an NFL schedule before. We don't even really know if like 1 week is long enough to break your body from a football game, a Sunday to a Sunday. So just to get another bye week in there, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a smart idea. And I also like the idea of having the Super Bowl line up with President's Day, so you get like the de facto Monday off. We're guys who go to the Super Bowl and travel, and I still say I would like to have that Monday off just as a breather, if I can help it, at least just to get people out of the airports when I'm trying to get back to New York City.
Like, in fairness, brother, like, couldn't the NFL just put Super Bowl on Saturday? Then we all get Sunday to recoup. Super Bowl Saturday feels fine to me.
It feels fine, and also there's no college football on at that point too. So why not? Why not just give us a Super Bowl Saturday? But I do think his proposal for what we're working with is pretty fair. You'd have to find a different bye week because they're never going to get rid of NFL Thanksgiving Day games. And
I'm not sure, like, a universal bye week, like when they say do all the Pro Bowl things during the middle of this, like, there's not a single fan that wants to see their favorite player at the universal, like, bye-week Pro Bowl in the middle of the season, because God forbid somebody's playing fat guy dodgeball and all of a sudden they break a thumb or something, and like that, it's just not worth it in the middle of the season. And to your point that you made earlier, I think it's important here. Guys' bodies are hurting by the middle of the season. If you give them a week off, they're going to take a week off.
Yeah, a week off for sure. That's another thing that I thought, with maybe we'll have a Pro Bowl in the middle of the week, bro. Ain't nobody going to participate in that. Nobody's going to show up to that. No one's going to watch it because none of the players are going to show up. Like that. Like, I think the nature of the sport itself makes it so much different than like an NBA All-Star break where, we'll go fly to Chicago or whatever, and we'll kick it and play basketball for a couple of days, and then we'll get back to work. No, it's not like that. It reminds me actually when I covered the first Pro Bowl games that they had in Vegas. And I remember I was just going around and asking players, like, what do you like more? What do you like better? Would you rather play in an actual game, or would you rather have, like, dodgeball and all this other silly stuff? And everyone said, give me the dodgeball. Give me the dodgeball. Give me, the kicking, throwing competitions, except for one person that I asked. Max Crosby was like, no, I'd rather play in a real game. I'd rather put the pads on and go give it best against the best. So I was like,
on point.
That sounds very, very on brand for you. But for the most part, I don't think guys would participate if there's a midweek or, a mid-season Pro Bowl or, early, like the first part of like the late portion of the season where you have all the Pro Bowl votes counted. Just 2 bye weeks, probably not universal, but if you're going to do 18 games, I think 2 bye weeks is the absolute must.
Well, and look, there's a logic between, like, maybe have the second bye week line up with the college football playoff. I understand that mindset as football fans, but this is the number one thing I would say to that. This year, the NFL decided to play games on Saturday, the weekend of the college football playoff. So, like, when the whole playoff is actually premiering and college football needs that landscape, the NFL said, we, sir, will remind you exactly who's in charge. So the thing of it is, the NFL is not going to do anything based on any sports calendar, right? They're going to do what they want, when they want, how they want it. And I don't think the TV partners are going to love, like CBS, Fox, NBC, aren't going to love the idea of a Sunday that doesn't have football games. So I think the universal bye is probably just a failure. But I will say, CMAC, you started this by talking about a top 5 quarterback talking about this in general. And I'm stealing this from Adam Schefter. I want to give Shefty credit. But Shefty said very clearly, he's like, I think the most important part of this is that a prominent player is talking openly about 18 games, which tells you that players are preparing for this. They're having these conversations. Like, this is real. I think players understand that 18 games is coming, and I think it's inevitable.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable too. I remember started hearing whispers about it as soon as 17 games passed. Like, hey, can we get an 18th? Like, whoa, hold on. We haven't even seen the first 12-5 record yet. Let's slow down. But I think that players preparing for themselves for an 18-game season is probably a good idea. One, just based on what we know the owners want. They want more games. They want more money. They want more revenue. So do their TV partners. And, I think, it's funny because I remember people said at the time, man, is 17 games oversaturation? No, everyone still showed up to watch all the football games, me included. And guess what? I don't know if this is good to say, but 18 games, 19 games, 20 games, I will be there every single week to watch every single football game, even if it was not my job.
But that's why I'm going to say something controversial here. And I need you to understand that I think we know each other well enough. You know, I have a servant's heart. I'm in general, I like to think of myself as a kind person. I have a hard time caring about player safety, player health and safety, when the players bend on things like this for more games. Now, you could say it's inevitable, but realistically, it is about money. And so if the players get a bigger piece of the pie, at the end of the day, they're going to take it. So then when everybody turns around and says health and safety, health and safety, health and safety, when you're part of a collective bargaining association, when you're part of a union, you have certain things that you can fight for and not bend, no matter the consequence. There is no world where the players have to give 18 games. They're simply going to give 18 games because eventually it benefits everybody. And if you're going to do that, then you kind of got to miss me with but care about my health and safety more than I care about it when I'm making money off of it.
Yeah, I honestly agree with you there. I think the 18 games, the 2 bikes to the 18 games probably should come from the owners. Be like, we need to protect this product to a degree. If we go out there and you have 18 games season and some team has their bye week in like week 4, I don't think that that's a winning strategy for anyone involved. But look, the reason why that we're on this path towards 18 games, and you alluded to, is the NFL union, they give up like every time they have a negotiation. They find themselves on the bad end of the stick, giving up 17 games so you could smoke some more pot when you already know when you're going to get tested, when you have the 16-game schedule. And it's funny because like owners, they have hard lines on things. You will never see an NFL without a franchise tag. Never. And I don't care. Like the players could say, we're not going to 18 games unless you give up the franchise tag. Owners say, fine, we'll say it's 17 then. Like that's how important this thing is. So they don't really have a whole lot of leveraging power or negotiating power, just because I think when you look at a union of NFL players, the range of interests within the own union are so wide. Most guys are only going to play for 2 or 3 years. Then you have like your 1%ers like Joe Burrow, who will actually see multiple CBAs within his career. It's tough to get it done. But I would just say we're headed on the path toward 18 games. You just have to figure out a way to get 2 bye weeks. It's just good for everyone involved. It's just a smidge healthier. And you give a better chance for the Super Bowl to actually feature 2 healthy teams, which is what we want at the end of the day.
I want to reiterate what you said about the number of people. I think people need to know, there are thousands of people, thousands of players in the NFL Players Association. And to find thousands of players that can agree on anything when they all have different goals, like not everybody's interested in protecting the future. Some people are only going to be in the league for 1 year. Some people are barely making the practice squad. They all have wildly different needs and wants because they're all at different levels in their career. And that's part of what cuts them off. Like the owners will always have the strength of knowing that there's only 32 of them. And as long as those 32 old dudes can all come, and women, like men and women, all old people can come to an agreement, that's all it takes. You got to do that, 1,000-fold in order to get the number of players that we're talking about in the Players Association. So it's not an enviable position. Stick with Burrow for a second, though, because the other thing he talked about a little bit on Part of My Take was being forgotten. And I think it's important to note here, he didn't say forgotten in a disrespectful way. He agrees that he's sort of been slept on because he hasn't been healthy. I think there's a fair conversation that needs to happen at some point about the label injury prone with Joe Burrow, because I would argue that if Lamar had the exact same injury history that Joe Burrow had over the last 3 years, we would be sitting here absolutely apoplectic in the streets about the injury prone Lamar and how you can't trust him. Like, I think that's sort of fair right now for Joe.
Yeah, I think it's fair for people to be concerned. I do struggle sometimes with like the injury prone label, because I feel like every football player is like one bad play away from being injury prone for the rest of their career. And I think if you go look at Joe Burrow's career, he's been dinged up a lot, but he's really only missed games in 2 years. I think you could argue last year, especially the start of last year, probably should have been sitting out some of those games as he was dealing with some of his training camp stuff. But like this is like the weird like gray area that I find Joe Burrow in, where it's like you're not like over the course of your career, I think he's only missed like 13 games in 4 seasons, and 2 seasons he played like basically the entire year. But it's always just like week to week, my ankle's messed up, my toes messed up, my thumb's messed up, my elbow hurts. And that's where you find him. But man, Joe, you're the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. All right. Okay, like just come out and play these games. Like, you haven't been underrated by anybody, I don't think. You just haven't been available. And unfortunately for him, plays in the division with a 2-time MVP winning quarterback. The Steelers are taking a step up. It's hard to imagine the Browns being as bad as they've been in quarterback over the past couple of years. He's got his chance. He's got his chance right here to shut people up, but he's going to have to play, going to be healthy, and they're going to need Amarius Mims to be as good as he is projected to be at their tackle that they drafted in the first round this year.
I mean, the Bengals have tried with the offensive line year in and year out.
They've tried.
Like, that's one of those things where, like, they keep going up to the bar and giving the hot girl their number. It just never works out, like, ever. They've drafted. They've spent money. They've done all of it. So, that's one of those things where you just look at it and say, it's cute effort, guys. Like, Mims, I hope, turns out to be an absolutely spectacular player. Their defense needs to be better than it was last year too, CMAC. Yeah. It was an abject disaster last year for that Luan Arama defense that we all thought, 2 years ago, he was a head coaching candidate. Now it's like, woo, got some problems on the defensive side of the ball. The Bengals got some things to fix.
It kind of like bleakly funny to me when the team is like, okay, we got to fix the offensive line. Well, you said like 6 years ago, you're still trying to fix the offensive line. Or, or teams that just can't get something right. Like the Ravens with wide receivers for a long time. They kept throwing assets at it, and they just couldn't get it right. The Bengals, they drafted Amarius Mims this year. They signed Trent Brown. They signed Orlando Brown last year. They signed Alex Kappa. They drafted Cordell Volson in the second round. They signed Ted Karras. Like they have really, really tried to get this offensive line thing right. And maybe this will be the winning combination that they need to keep Joe Burrow upright. And so the underrated, Joe Burrow, highest paid quarterback in the league, can finally get things moving in the right direction for him. Super Bowl appearance, Joe Burrow, by the way.
Also, the second best betting odds to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, behind only Kansas City. So like hard to see where money's sleeping on him. Have you ever seen Elf? Like Elf is one of my favorite movies.
A million times.
Okay, so times. The scene where they're trying to figure out the book they have to write, and the answer is to bring in another writer. Like, and so there's this moment for me where that's what I feel like certain teams should do when they get to the drafting process or the pro scouting process. And it's like, hey guys, we need a wide receiver. I need them at that point to sit back and be like, all right, we're going to outsource this. We're just going to find somebody else to come in and tell us what, because we can't do it. That's where the Bengals are with the offensive line. It's like, just bring in somebody else, and what's more existential than a peach? Like, that's just, you just got to bring in somebody to help.
Anybody at this point. And they've tried. This year might be the year where it gets done. They've got like 3 of the biggest offensive tackles I've ever seen in my life, with Orlando Brown, Amarius Mims, and Trent Brown. So hopefully they're just saying, we'll build a wall around Joe Burrow, and we'll see where we're at in January. I think that's the best that they can hope for right now.
We'll see where that player buffet is by January, too. All right, we're just getting started. OTAs are right around the corner, just a couple of weeks away. Thank God we're all at the spot where now we'll start overreacting to people dropping passes in practice. That's coming. But when we come back, we'll get you some of our biggest OTA questions coming up next. We're back. CMAC, I like to ask our guests on this show to give the show a rating, 1 to 10. Jory only gives 9s because she says there's always room for improvement. Very on brand for Jory. I wanted to plant that seed for you. I don't know how you feel so far, but, if there's anything I can do to make sure that the survey comes back as high a score as possible. Like, I feel like I'm the guy at the auto shop now. I just want to let you know, survey's going to come in the mail at the end of the episode.
Okay, cool. I think we're at high marks right now because anytime I get to doom about the Cowboys in front of producer Colin, that's a good day for me.
I feel the pain for producer Colin because he is a Cowboys fan, a diehard Cowboys fan. And the amount of time, like, this doesn't bring me joy. I worked for years when I was at ESPN on radio. Our producer was a Jets fan. And, the Jets always suck. And he sat there and he's like, why do you always, every year in the offseason, he would come and he'd be like, man, we're going to win 11 games this year. Look at this. And I was like, you're going to suck. Like, let's bet a nice steak dinner now. I'm going to bet the under on whatever number you give me for win total. And he's like, why do you always hate me? And it's like, as a Raiders fan, I have learned to accept the suck. And that way I go in with marginal expectations every year. I'm like, you know what? I come in and I'm like, my God, if the biggest problem I have is that my quarterback doesn't perform well in the playoffs, I'm gonna be okay with that. I'll be honest right now. I'm too hurt and jaded as a fan to worry about playoff performances.
Right. Can we just get there first? Dude, I'm a Falcons fan. I'm feeling the same way. Can we just get there first?
And Colin is just typed. Colin typed into our screen, I've learned to accept nothing matters till January and nothing will change the end of our story. All right, Colin, you know what stinks more than losing in January? double-digit years of double-digit losses. I went through double-digit years of consecutively of double-digit losses. All I root for is more good Sundays than bad Sundays as a fan now. Like if I get 9-8, I'm throwing my own damn parade. Like I'm gonna get a little confetti, run out. I had 9 Sundays that were good and 8 Sundays that were awful. That's a win for me.
Dude, every time I see one of those graphics that has, the longest playoff droughts in the NFL, and the Jets are always number one, but the Falcons are sneakily getting up there. That the last time they made the playoffs was the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles, which was 7 years ago. I
remember when the Raiders.
It's been a while.
When the Raiders lost the Super Bowl, they had lost the Tuck Rule game and the Syracuse game. They'd had all these weird losses. I remember looking at one of my buddies and I was like, man, I'd rather not even make the playoffs than go through this heartbreak every year. I can't do it. That was the last time the Raiders won a playoff game was that season. And that was 2002 at this point. So yeah, I take all those words back. All right. So OTAs right around the corner. I'm damaged, CMAC. I'm
I'm the same way. No, because I've had the same exact realization in my brain where I was like, man, if we're going to do 28-3, if we're going to lose to the Eagles like they did this following season, I'd rather not make the playoffs. That's just, I've found to be not true whatsoever. Please make the playoffs. Just be entertaining, be interesting for once, please.
Panthers fans sitting here saying, what's that word? I've never seen it before. Playoff? Okay. So OTAs right around the corner. Let's break down some of the biggest questions, some of CMAC's biggest OTA Qs. I like the way that really comes off, CMAC's OTA Qs. Your first question, good sir, is?
Can Caleb Williams and the Bears challenge the Lions in the NFC North? It's a hot one. It's a hot one. But I kind of think that they can. I think they can. Based on they gave the Lions some tough games last season. There was a game, I don't remember, I think it was the second game they played. I don't remember exactly which week it was, that came down to one of the last drives of the game. Then, the Bears got the ball back and they did Bearsy things and it didn't quite turn out to where they wanted it to go. But I look at this Bears team from last year. The defense was really, really good, especially after they locked in the Montez Sweat trade. They were arguably the best defensive football for the final 9 or 10 weeks of the season. And then, Justin Fields was not the most consistent quarterback, but he at least showed, hey, if DJ Moore has someone who's willing to fling the ball downfield, you can make some big plays there down the field. DJ Moore had the best season of his career. And now, if you move on to this year, you have Caleb Williams, you have Keenan Allen, you have Remo Dunes, you have DeAndre Swift. The offensive line is in a better place than it's been in a long time. If I was a Bears fan, I would be looking at this and say, why not us? Why not this year? Why not? Why can't we play spoiler to the Lions? I know it'll be tough, but here's where I think that they can get them. I think that Lions defense is very gettable. I think that they have the personnel to actually make life hell for, that specific defense. They've kind of revamped things with Carlton Davis and Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw at cornerback. But the Bears, they have arguably the best wide receiver trio in the league. And if Remo Dunes is even better than they're projecting to be year one, that could be a really formidable group. To me, it all really comes down to how ready is Caleb Williams? If he's ready to come in, take this leap, and immediately be a top 15 quarterback, I kind of think the Bears can play spoiler win the division. Although I will say, I'm not sure if the Lions are even number one this year because the Packers look really damn good too.
Okay. See this? Look, I picked the Bears as my playoff. Everybody picks the surprise playoff team, Bears. At this point, let's make that a drinking game. Nobody's going to be standing up by the end of the day. Everybody's picking them as the surprise playoff team. That being said, there's 2 words on why not the Bears. Matt Eberflus. I have a hard time keeping a head coach that's basically dead man walking when you've rebuilt the entire organization. And whatever you expect from this offense, let's remind everybody, Eberflus was responsible for Luke Getsy, right? So, why did he get this hire right? That stuff bothers me. Now, while we're talking about things that bother me, We saw a half a season of absolutely incredible for Jordan Love. We also saw half a season of glorified dog poop from Jordan Love. And we have forgotten about the glorified dog poop all the way through it because of the order of the games. Like, Jordan Love got hot at the end of the year. I really like Jordan Love. I just think maybe like we have fallen in love too fast here. All the dating analogies today. I feel like we've gone on 2 dates with Jordan Love and now we're trying to put a ring on it. And that scares me.
Yeah, but the back half of the season was so good. It was so. It was. I get what you're saying, and honestly, I think even when you go back and watch some of the good stuff from Jordan Love in the back half of the season, there's like some survivorship bias in there where it's like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have made some of these throws, but boy, still got completed, and man, not many people would attempt that, let alone even be able to make that. So, I would imagine there's some regression because they jump from like one of the like just a below average offense to the best offense in football over the course of the season. I would imagine the truth lies somewhere in the middle, but probably a little closer towards being like a top 7 offense. I think this division is going to be really tough.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Overall, yeah.
Are you counting Minnesota out of it completely? You don't. You're out on Minnesota.
I'm not like totally out on Minnesota because they're one of these teams that. I should say in terms of winning the division, I am out. But like in terms of them playing spoiler, you got Justin Jefferson, you got Jordan Addison, you got a damn good coach, you got good defensive coordinator. Like they're one of those teams that is probably not good, but I don't know if I would be thrilled to play them, twice a season because they do have like the top end talent to make some noise and potentially get you to lose a game that you really need over the course of the season. So this is more really just about the NFC North being really tough. But I really do think with the Bears' improvements, why not them as a playoff team? And why not them as the potential NFC North winner or at least challenging for the crown with what they've assembled for this offseason? But
I do get a little like Terry and Arnold, you mentioned earlier as the draft pick. I really coveted him. I wanted the Raiders to draft him. There's no doubt. I think he has the chance to be special. I have a hard time rookie corners. I have a hard time being confident in, right? So young corners, I think need a second more often than not to me, especially the way the game is played at the pro level. So I like it, but I do think you make a good point. The way the rules are now, everything skews so much to the offense. I think the Bears have the chance to have one of the best offenses in the league, right? So when that happens, and I think that will happen, I think you're right. They're going to put up, this is not going to be the Bears we're used to. Like they're not going to be sitting here winning ugly football games. They're going to be putting up, upper 20 points a game and just really pressuring people to try and match that play for play. I do think that the Bears have a chance to be very good. I don't share your passion, but I will say this, like I also don't share your passion for the Packers. I'm settling in on Lions 1, Bears 2, Packers 3, Vikings 4. How do you like that?
Ooh, that's tough. I'll throw in an extra prediction on your prediction. All teams win at least 8 games.
Oh, that is a staunch division. All right. So let's keep going through your OTA questions. The next one, and I see it here. I happen to have a vested interest in this, but go ahead. Read us your question, Michael Penix Jr. fan.
Not me.
Well, I mean, you're a Falcons. You're a Falcons fan, so like that means you stole my quarterback. Go ahead.
Will the Raiders regret not drafting a quarterback? I honestly think the answer on this is TBD. Because it kind of depends on what you think about the quarterbacks who were just drafted. I think that 6 quarterbacks winning the top 12 picks is like unreasonable. For you to be at pick 13 and be like, there's nobody left. We know based on NFL history that that's just a bad bet for these teams to be making. QB 6 going in the top 12 to the Broncos. I would imagine we see a good amount of busts there. So to me, if you're like not in the, obviously you can't get Caleb Williams because that's locked in for months. So really you're looking at like Drake May or Jaden Daniels, and you would have to give up a lot to jump from 13 to 2 or 3. I don't know if they will regret it yet, but I do know I would be feeling kind of down if I was a Raiders fan looking across the division. I still think my quarterback situation is better than Denver. I would rather have Minshew and Aiden O'Connell than Bo Nix. But, you got Mahomes and Herbert and Jim Harbaugh. I don't know. I think you can kind of look at it either way, which is why it's a question. Do the Raiders regret it?
You're not wrong. Unfortunately, one of my favorite phrases my mom grew me up with was "people in hell want ice water." I think the Raiders wanted a quarterback, right? But the cost of moving up made it so prohibitive. I said months before the draft on one of our shows that I don't think there was any offer that was going to get the top 3 teams to move off of the top 3 quarterbacks. And I stand by that. Like, the Raiders did not make it secret that they coveted Jaden Daniels. I don't think there's anything they could have offered that would have gotten Jaden Daniels to them. So now all of a sudden you're looking at it and saying, okay, so now what do you do? And part of the reason that this all gets so complicated is that, like I mentioned earlier in the show, next year's draft class is not right now widely regarded as a very good one. Shedeur Sanders has as many question marks as answers. Quinn Ewers, we're not even sure he's going to hold on to the starting job. Like, it's just Some of these quarterbacks don't look particularly good. Will they regret it? I don't think there was anything. Maybe I've just made peace in my mind. I don't think they could have gotten into the top 3 no matter what. So would they regret JJ? Would they regret, not trying to trade up to get Bo Nix? I don't know. I think they just got stuck where they are. And sometimes in life, you're just stuck.
Yeah, you're stuck. You're just stuck. But I do.
Boy,
think
that makes my Sundays dark, man. I'm gonna have to get I haven't had a drink of alcohol in 2 months. I'm gonna have to get a special bottle on Sundays just to make it through what this quarterback's gonna look like.
Hey, you have my favorite defensive line duo, I think, to watch in the league now. Well, Wilkins and Crosby. They're on some crazy Iron Man that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. Just in terms of percent of snaps played, games played. They never come off the field. They never miss time. Even Christian Wilkins, I think he was almost hitting 90% of the snaps as a defensive tackle, which is crazy. And then you look at Crosby, he's playing 97% of the snaps. The defense should be, I think the defense should be in good shape. And I think just the philosophical question of, will the greatest regret not trading up for quarterback? I don't know if they will, because of what you said. One, the price to get one of those guys for teams that needed quarterbacks desperately would have been exorbitant. Talking 3 first-round picks plus whatever other plays you got that would throw sweeteners in there for you to actually get up there, because that's the price that's being paid for quarterback talent now, especially at the top of the draft. That would be a tough one to just make happen in general. But you didn't blow the assets. You still got your future first-round picks in case another quarterback comes up that you feel a little bit better about. Still got a good defense. I think that there's merit in being patient and waiting until you find the right guy. And as a Georgia fan, I will never say that picking Brock Bowers in the first round is a bad idea. I think he was arguably the best player in the entire class. Is the fit a little muddy with Michael Mayer? Maybe, but it's not like Michael Mayer is so good that you would pass on drafting someone like Brock Bowers.
Especially if you have mediocre quarterback play. What better way to help a mediocre quarterback than addressing your offensive line, which they did also in the draft, and then giving yourself a room that now has Michael Mayer, Brock Bowers, Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. You've put enough weapons. And I think Zamir White has a chance to be a really quality running back. He showed out in the last month of the season last year. This offense is actually in pretty good shape for a quarterback to walk in and have it be plug and play. So in my mind, you've actually made your weakness better by getting Brock Bowers. It gives you somebody, if you can even get competent quarterback play. Look, I think the Raiders this year are probably a 7-win football team, maybe an 8-win football team, but I think they're a 7 or 8-win football team that next year, when they pay Dak Prescott $375 million fully guaranteed, some people are going to suddenly fall in love with.
Yeah, dude, it can be tough because the framework is for a good team is it's finally coming together. Just missing that last piece. But I would say it's better to be missing that last piece than to blow all those picks, blow all those assets, trade a player that's going to be good for your football team to go get someone that, you might not know is good. We'll see what happens in the future, but I really don't think being patient here is bad, because what happens if you go out and you trade all those picks and the quarterback's not any good? Okay, well, I still don't have a quarterback as good as Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert, and now I don't have the assets to go make my team better regardless. Now, before we move on, I have a question for you. Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew? Which one?
So I've actually been asked this a lot today. It's so funny that you asked me this question. I think what happens here is a little bit of brand bias. When we like someone, we fall in love with what they do. And people like Gardner Minshew, the character. So even last year, it's like, oh, look at all the wins in Indianapolis. Well, if you go back and rewatch those games, Shane Steichen did a lot of really nice work to cover up some things, and Gardner was fine. Aiden O'Connell, if you go back, people weren't infatuated with Aiden O'Connell last year. And frankly, early on, he struggled. Over the course of the year, he got to be okay. And I think Aiden's probably a pretty okay quarterback, right? So in my mind, I think okay wins out here. I think Aiden O'Connell is going to be calm enough. I think he's going to win the job in preseason. I think it's going to go to Aiden. But I think the expectation is really going to be, can either of these guys limit their mistakes? Like the way the Raiders are going to win this year is limiting their turnovers. Right? That defense, let the defense keep the other team's score down and then just try and find a way to pound out some wins. I think it's a very boring way to win games, but Aiden's capable of playing smart football. He has to get better at getting rid of the ball faster. He did over the course of the year. I think that continues. And even though he doesn't look like a quarterback or sound like a quarterback or really have a quarterback's body, he looks like, like your buddy that's had too many beers. Like, even though he doesn't fit any of the molds, I think Aiden's going to win the job.
Yeah, I think so too. And he'll be my pick for the job. Just whatever you showed last year, probably feels like you can get a little bit more out of that moving forward than whatever you see from Gardner Minshew, which is maxed out probably.
Yeah, especially with with Getsy as the offensive coordinator for the Raiders. I think you're going to see a lot of play action and get the ball out to the tight ends. It's just going to be play action, tight end, deep. Play action, tight end, deep. That's it. Like it's which is going to be fine. Just going to need a quarterback to not screw that up. Speaking of quarterbacks not screwing things up, I think your last question is one of the most interesting storylines of the entire NFL. Look at this tease. And it's not about a team we talk about very often. Hit me up.
Will the Titans' investments in Will Levis pay off? I am fascinated by the Titans this year because they have shown that they're all in on seeing what this Will Levis experiment at least turns out to be. We've seen a lot of young quarterbacks get into situations where they don't have the veteran talent around them to really hit the ground running and flourish a little bit. But I don't think you can say that about Will Levis. I know the Titans, they got laughed at a little bit for like how much they paid Calvin Ridley or going out to sign a running back like Tony Pollard, but you're in information finding mode. You're not necessarily trying to compete. Right, I guess you're always trying to compete, but you're not necessarily thinking you're going to win a Super Bowl. But you've given Will Levis a chance, right? You have DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard, TJ Spears, Okonkwo at tight end is a solid player. And you go out and you draft your left tackle of the future with J.C. Latham with the 7th pick. You're giving him a chance. It's more than what a lot of young quarterbacks can say outside of Caleb Williams and maybe Jaden Daniels this year with some of the talent they have at wide receiver. Now, will it pay off? I don't know. I think that's kind of tough to project without seeing like what Will Levis looks like in the preseason. But man, it's tough to say that they haven't given him like every chance to win this year, just based on how hard they went in on offense this offseason. So when you look at like supporting casts around the division, it's probably. I think it's better than Jacksonville's now because you stole their wide receiver. Maybe it's about on par with where Indianapolis is and what they put around Anthony Richardson. But this is a good group. It's a good group that's going to help you win games, and it's going to get Will Levis to be the best version of himself that he can be in year 2.
I really like the way you described the thought process on it because I guess there's a little element of like, why not? I mean, if you think there's any chance Will Levis is the guy, so who cares about your owner's money? Your owner went out and spent some money. Fine. They spend that money. They bring in enough talent. Now you're going to find out. You're going to know one way or the other. If he chokes, if Will Levis can't do it, well, you're probably going into the draft next year hoping you can find a quarterback. Again, I don't think that's a great class, but that's what you're hoping. But at least you've given yourself the opportunity to get the most accurate answer to this. Like, you're not putting him with a bunch of bums and then delaying it another year where you're like, yeah, but he just didn't have any good quarter or wide receivers around him. We got to get this. We got to get that. Like, you're eliminating all of the yeah buts and you're getting a definitive answer. And if he's not the guy, then whoever is drafted next year or whatever quarterback they bring in has a much better room to deal with as they're looking at and they're like, hey, it's this sort of like, let's build a solid foundation and then see if we have the right quarterback. If we don't, we're going to have an easier time when we get the right quarterback.
And this is, I really appreciate what the Titans did this year. And it's more about like probably microaggressions that I have with like some of the maybe more analytics minded people on football Twitter, which is not like a big slight, but we get into this. It's a slight, not a big one. It's just a small one.
Tiny slight.
It's a tiny slight. We get into these conversations about like saving assets, saving cap space, not using these things on the wrong thing. And I remember when Calvin Ridley got his deal signed, people were like, oh, how could you spend all this money on Calvin Ridley, $23 million a year? Well, dude, at the time, the Titans, they had like $50 million in cap space left after they'd already made moves that offseason or this past offseason. You don't get anything for walking into the season with a boatload of cap space. You don't win anything that way. Like you need to spend this money, you need to spend these assets, and you need to compete. I think we've gotten to a point sometimes where people are so okay with just like sitting on assets and throwing a year away when that's not always practical. So I really appreciate what the Titans did. You spend money at wide receiver, you spend money at running back, you go draft an offensive tackle. Are you going to win the Super Bowl? Probably not. But you're going to get it. You're going to compete. You're going to see if you can find something. And that is the ethos of sports. So I just want to applaud Rand Carlin, applaud the Titans, and we're going to go take our sport back.
Yeah, there is some element of like, so I do a weekly hit. I lived in Nashville, for anyone that doesn't know, for over 20 years, right? So I do a weekly hit with the ESPN radio station there every week. And I said a few weeks ago, I said, anybody that makes a definitive statement about the Titans this year is lying to you. Because we don't know if Will Levis is the answer. We have no idea if Brian Callahan can be a head coach. We have no idea. Like, it might be, could be, who knows? Or it could be all Zach Taylor's offense and he's just out there getting lucky. I don't know. Like, we don't know what any of this looks like. So to me, that's one of the exciting things about the Titans. Like, I would not be surprised at all if when it all shakes out, the Titans finish in second in their division. Like, when you look across the board, I still don't trust the Jags right now to get things right. I don't know that we've seen enough from Anthony Richardson. The knock when he was drafted is he needs game experience. Well, I don't want to bog everybody down with details here, but he didn't get any damn game experience last year. He played, 5 games? Like, the thing he needs is reps. So we still don't really know what that's going to look like. And Jonathan Taylor wasn't himself when he came back rushing the football. Like, I think the only team right now that you can say definitively in that division that doesn't have any questions, clear-cut leader, is Houston. Like, Houston, their question is, can they figure out how to compete with Kansas City? But for everybody else, that's a jumbled mess where I could see a surprise team in that division winning 9 games.
Yeah. This division's up for the taking to me. I've seen a lot of talk about the Texans. I am a little bit concerned about their defense.
Oh,
just a smidge. They weren't actually that good on defense last year. They were like situationally good at times. You go back to the Browns games, like where they picked Joe Flacco off a couple of times. That was good. Then they go to Baltimore next week and just get run the hell off the ball. So I think that defense is probably still a year away from being the unit that they want. The offense is going to be awesome. But if you can find a way to score on the Texans, I think that this division's gettable. Maybe you're not winning the division, but you can steal a game to sneak into like that wild card spot at the end of the season. I just think all of these teams are especially the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Titans. I think they're all just about the same thing in terms of like the total pieces that they've actually put together. Yeah, I would say of those 3, Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback. But your best receiver just went over to the division rival. Anthony Richardson, you're back, but you only played 4 games last season. The Jonathan Taylor experience was better last year than it was the year before, but still kind of up and down. All these teams have flaws, but I don't think there's any bottom feeders here, which should make for a really fun division. Like, this is one group that I'm really looking forward to watching this year, just with the quarterback talent and mix of veteran talent that they've added, and get a little bit of bad blood between the Titans and the Jaguars, which is low-key a rivalry that has potential because those fans absolutely hate each other, if people weren't aware.
Regionally, that rivalry matters a lot. It'd be an interesting future show to do, like, rivalries that matter more locally than nationally. Because if you say, like, if you go to Titans fans and you say Jags, they still remember the year that the Titans only lost 3 games all year, 2 in the regular season, 1 in the playoffs, and all 3 of them were to the Jags. So, like, that stuff haunts, right? Like, it's just, it absolutely sits. Like, Jags fans, Titans fans hate each other. It's an interesting rivalry. I could see it going 2 ways. I could see it going either like where this division becomes sneaky good, or we're sitting there late in the season saying, "Oh dear God, we have to watch the Colts and the Jags on Amazon tonight." Like it just feels like that. There's no in between on all that.
Well, that's why we need the second bye week, because I feel like a lot of the things that we've struggled with in these Thursday night football games, like, Titans, Jags with no Trevor Lawrence in week 17. Yeah, I'm out on that too. But if we can get the second bye week, like we talked about at the start of the show, might get some healthier games.
Look at that. He's brought it all full circle. That's why he's an expert. By the way, follow him on Twitter at @4verts. Follow me at Jason Fitz. We got to give a shout out to Colin, who's listened to us say terrible things about the Cowboys for the majority of this episode, and yet has managed to keep the episode going. So a lot of love for Colin doing the God's work, producing behind the scenes. Make sure you leave us a review, rate, subscribe, tell your friends and family and enemies to hang out with us. We continue to give you off-season pods as we go through the whole summer. So just stick up with us on social media, follow all of the work on Yahoo Sports, and as always, we will be back in some form. I don't know what it'll be next week, but I know that I'll be here with somebody in CMAC. Before you go, a scale of 1 to 10, how'd we do?
I'll give us a 10.
Because
you know what, Jory? Some things are perfect, and that's okay. Today's podcast was one of those things.
Also, more important, right now, if we were in the church league about to play a little ball, and you walk in and you've got me and Frank, it's podcast ball. You got me and Frank standing side by side. Which one of us you taking?
You told me you've been working out, so I'm gonna go with you.
Oh, look at that. So the only thing Frank needs to know about this is that CMAC picked me over Frank. That's why he set it up that way. There we go. Hey, Charles McDonald, appreciate you, man. Thanks for hanging out with me. Appreciate you. Thanks, you guys, for listening to us. Have a great week.